That was great.
I'd like to gavel in our regularly scheduled meeting for May 6, 2013. If you'd all please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Alderman Harper.
Here.
Alderman Nguyen.
Here.
Alderman Robertson.
Here.
Alderman Kramer. Alderman Toohey.
Here.
Alderman Lay.
Here.
Alderwoman Manister.
Here.
Alderwoman Saunders.
Here.
It's all confused because we're going backwards.
I know.
Now you're doing
Approval of the agenda for the regular Board of Alderman meeting for May 6, 2013. Any changes to the agenda? Alderwoman Saunders.
I don't know if you'd inform me where to take care of this. Bill 5756, I'd like that sent to Ways and Means. Should I wait until it's time for that bill?
Well, we can discuss it when we get to that. You can make a
Okay,
motion at
that's
that
fine.
time.
Thank you. That's the last one.
Any other, do I have a motion to accept the agenda as presented?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second?
A second.
Motion was first and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Next item, consideration approval of the minutes from the regular meeting from April the 1st, 2013. Any changes to the minutes?
I typed them up. Do I need to read them this time? I went ahead and...
Did
this
you
was-
already submit them, or
I gave them to Octavia.
have the changes been made?
No, Would you say as amended?
Right, I know, we got the, I just didn't know if we had, would you just want to keep them on hold and bring them back when they've had them changed?
In the past, we just said as amended.
Well, then, okay, then we need to read them all, okay?
Okay, page 2, under Bill 5744, line 13, budget for the first payment. Well, after that phrasing, budget for the first payment, add, Alderwoman Saunders asked if we've been saving for the truck for the past 10 years. Bullis stated no, but we will do this going forward on all capital expenditures. Alderwoman Saunders questioned the total amount of the city will be paying in interest. Oh, I forgot interest there. Approximately $55,000. Then page 6, under requests for qualification compensation benefits survey, line 15, ending Alderwoman Saunders, add, stated Alderman Kramer brought up the salary caps. Alderwoman Saunders stated she thinks the compensation survey is an excellent tool, and I argued for it from the beginning. I didn't win the day when it came to the budget. If we have extra money, it is an excellent tool. Alderwoman Saunders stated her unfamiliarity with salary caps and thinks we should be able to reward employees. And then line 16, because of that, strike, but thinks the compensation survey is a good tool to have.
Okay, any other changes?
That's it.
We have a motion for the two changes.
Three changes.
Which one read two?
I read 3, the strike.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry, okay. I didn't see it, okay.
I move that we accept the April 1st minutes as amended.
Well, no, just the changes to the minutes.
I move we accept the changes to the April 1st minutes.
Second?
A second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Now, do we have a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
So moved, Your Honor.
And second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Next item, minutes from the regular Board of Alderman meeting from April 15th, 2013. Any changes? Alderwoman Saunders?
Sorry. Page 1, end of first paragraph. Saunders replied that it is inappropriate and asked Showalter and Jabouri a question. Alderman Toohey interrupted and stated, why don't we go into closed session and find out? Alderwoman Saunders began to answer, and Alderman Toohey repeated, why don't we go into closed session and find out? Then he said, this is ridiculous. And then also page 1, the last sentence, Alderwoman Manistar voted no, and Alderwoman Saunders voted no. That's all the changes I have.
Okay. Motion for the change?
I move that we accept the changes to the April 15th minutes.
And second?
Second. Oh,
I second.
We had a first and a second for the amendments to the April 15 minutes. All in favor, say aye.
aye.
All opposed?
Opposed.
Thank you. Now we have a motion to accept the amended minutes from April 15, 2013.
So moved.
And second?
Second, Your Honor.
We had a first and a second to accept the minutes as amended. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, we have a presentation from Dr. Kenneth Warren with respect to the community survey poll. Once Dr. Warren is finished with his poll, what I would like to do is maybe we could have questions for him from the board at that point, if there are any right away. But I would like to suggest at our next Board of Alderman meeting, we actually meet again at 6 o'clock and have an hour dedicated from 6 till 7. First of all, to give us a little bit more time to go through the polls individually, but then to start that discussion on the rec center. So again, because of the full agenda tonight, that'll give us time to do that at the next meeting. Alderwoman Saunders.
Could I suggest, I think that's a good idea to have a longer meeting or more time to discuss it. Can we do that in some type of town hall type meeting so that we can allow for resident input?
Well, usually, well, I guess we can discuss that, but the issue there is we want to have kind of a working session so that we can come to some resolutions. And, you know, I would rather have it be more of a work type meeting for the Board of Aldermen to come to some conclusion. We will have public comment tonight, and maybe we could have a designated time for that at that meeting if we want to, like maybe 10 minutes, but I really would like it to be something where we can get something accomplished.
Are you anticipating us like moving forward with a bond obligation or something along that line, or what are you talking? I mean, since it's evident from the Patch article, and I think different residents have said as far as the clarity on the City Hall question, are we looking at that, or is that really part
Well,
of
I
it
think
or
that's
not?
what we want to discuss.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Warren. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And the Board of Aldermen. I presented this report last Wednesday for about 2 hours to the, what was it called? What's the
Public Works.
Public Works Committee. And so now I'm going to go over the report again and hit all the highlights. Last time I presented a presentation that really didn't come out very well, so I decided to scrap that. I mean, not coming out, the visual did not come out very well. It was unreadable, so I decided to just speak to my highlights today. Let me go over the methodology first of all. I was hired basically to zero in on recreational questions, particularly renovations, possible renovations to the Brentwood Community Center. So I was asked to interview a minimum of 450 people. I ended up interviewing actually 646 Brentwood adults. That means 18 years and older. I did this through a phone survey, and I merged landline phones with cell phones. That gave me a representative sample of 3.7%. Now that's much better than the 4.75% you would have received from interviewing only 450 adult residents of Brentwood. Let me explain what a margin of error is. When I talk about minus 3.7%, I'm talking about plus or minus. That would be the error range. And let me make it easier by let's just go to a 4% error margin. That means that if I interviewed this number of people and I received a 4% plus or minus error, that would be 600 people. This was slightly better than that, so it's 3.7. But if I had an error margin of 4 plus or minus 4%, that means if 50% of the respondents said yes to some question, it would mean that the range, the error range would be 54 could have said yes, or 46% could have said yes, with the probability by far that the 50% you got would be much more probable than would be the extremes of the error margin, the 54% or the 46%. We weighted for age and gender in this poll. Almost always in phone polls, younger people are underrepresented, no matter how hard you try to represent them. Younger people are underrepresented, as well as men. And so we did what pollsters do. We weighted for age and gender to reflect the demographics of Brentwood. And if you look at the demographics of Brentwood at the end of my survey, by the way, I want to call attention right away to the appendix, because my clients in the past have found this very useful. What I've done is I've replicated, starting on page 41, the answers to I replicated the entire survey and put in all the answers. They're all in percent. So turning to now the demographics I was talking about here in representing age, 53% are female and 47% are male. And the age categories, I won't go through them all, but represented proportionally as well. Remember, when you look at those, when gender, and you also look at the age categories, this is for only adults. So you can't look at, you know, what the Census Bureau of Census says and look at the percentages for different age categories unless you look at the age categories for over 18 years old. The bottom line, methodologically speaking, is that I feel that this poll is very representative of Brentwood residents overall. When we do benchmarks, it compares very well to other cities, meaning that replication is part of science. And you can see that in tables 1 and 2, when I compare, for instance, ratings of city services, you'll see how similar the ratings are. That just, you know, essentially goes to show that polls are pretty reliable. I would defend to the nth degree the reliability of telephone polls. It's still the gold standard in polling, despite some problems in trying to get a representative sample. I present a lot of color graphics in this report, around 14, and the color graphics are not only used to just make the report pretty, so to speak, but they do highlight the major findings so that you can see at a glance what the findings are. And so let me start going over the major findings. Okay, first of all, I present demographics. And what we find is what the Census, U.S. Census reported in 2010, that basically Brentwood is an aging community. People have lived in Brentwood a long time. Let's go to the first graph to show you how long people have lived in Brentwood. That's on page 10. And you'll see that 50.5% report having lived in Brentwood over 20 years. 26.9% said they've lived in Brentwood for 11 to 20 years. When you combine that percentage, that's a pretty high percentage of people reporting they have lived in Brentwood over 10 years. Now, the income of Brentwood residents, that is the gross family income reported, is fairly high, actually. It's about 67,000 plus. I noted in my report, in order to benchmark it, because, by the way, benchmarks are very important, because what is a benchmark? A benchmark is when a pollster gives you the results of findings, but also benchmarks these findings with, for instance, some other communities, comparing results here with how people rate recreational services in Kirkwood or, for instance, Creve Coeur. In this regard, I'm linking reported family income or household income to, in fact, what the U.S. government has found. And you can see from the graph 2, that the income I found by surveying research is very consistent, of course, with what the government reported. According to the U.S. Census, The median household income in Brentwood is $67,854. That's a 2010 census. While $58,630 were reported for St. Louis County, $47,202 for the state of Missouri, and $52,762 for the United States. Incidentally, incomes have gone down since 2010. It's now the median income for the United States is $51,500 due to higher unemployment and a slumping economy. What I found is that according to the graph 2, an income that certainly reflects that $67,000 plus median income. I found that 24.2% reported under $50,000, 32.5% $50,000 to $74,999, and then 18% $75,000 to $99,999. By the way, the reason pollsters report statistics like 999 is because you can have overlapping categories, so you can't be sloppy. You have to perfectly say, notice it goes up $74,999 and then starts with $75,000 to $99,999 and then $100,000 to $149,999. So you have to have exclusive categories and not overlapping categories. Very few people report incomes, relatively speaking, over $100,000, but that's consistent, of course, with what people report nationally, since, again, the median income in 2013, having just Googled it and looked it up, it is $51,500. Now, I'm happy to say that people enjoy living in Brentwood. Graph 3 on page 14 reports that almost 100% of the people rate Brentwood as a good to excellent place to live. 41.0% say good and 56.7% say excellent. That's a very good rating. It compares very favorably with most communities in the United States. When you benchmark, it compares rather consistently for your more affluent communities in St. Louis County. I mean, if you look at what Creve Coeur rated and so forth, you'll see that I work mostly for affluent communities in St. Louis County, such as Kirkwood and Webster Groves and Creve Coeur, in Baldwin and Brentwood, for that matter, and everything is relative, and that's why when I showed you the incomes, note that 67,000 is way above Missouri as a whole. It's way above the U.S. as a whole, and it's quite comfortably above St. Louis County as a whole. One of the reasons people have lived in Brentwood a long time is they enjoy living here. With almost 100%, only reporting having lived here. I should say almost 100% rate Brentwood is a pleasant place to live. An enormous percentage report having lived in Brentwood at least over 10 years and over 50% more than 20 years. You get only 2.3% rating Brentwood is only a fair to poor place to live, with only 0.3% actually saying poor. Pollsters find that there's a rule of one. There's always one who's going to sort of makes the poll honest, I guess. So you at least have some representation in a category, I guess. Another reason for the high Brentwood ratings overall as a place to live is seen in graph 4, where the perceived quality of services provided by the city of Brentwood is quite high too. 45% said excellent and 50% said good. So here you have 95% of the people reporting Brentwood services as good to excellent. When we look at the specific services provided by the city of Brentwood, on page 16, table 1, we see that residents rated trash pickup services first, with a 63.9% excellent rating and a 33.1% good rating. The fire department, second in the excellent category. It's virtually tied with police services when you combine good to excellent ratings. But the fire department got a 62.8% rating and a 33% good rating. Obviously, if you combine these categories, I mean, that combines to 95.2%. The other one combines to 97%. Police services, 90% good to excellent rating. That also compares very favorably to communities throughout the United States. Pollsters have a source to go to, City Managers Association publications, and we can see rankings for communities overall. I can't really report many of these benchmarks because they're protected by copyright. I had that problem when I was trying to do that a couple years ago for Creve Coeur, and talking with Creve Coeur's attorney, they suggested that I don't risk it, even though the opinion was that I could reproduce some of the benchmarks in a certain way. It just wasn't worth the risk to me or to the city that I'm working for. So the top three services were trash pickup, fire department services, and police services. You can see that on this graph there's quite a drop down from that, however. Not so much in combined categories, and by the way, these are ranked, as I say, at the bottom of the graph on excellent scores. So look carefully at this table. I think that's very useful for the Board of Aldermen and the mayor to look at these, because these really do show how people rank all the various services or items, so to speak, like a city's website. And you can see that people differ, enormously on the services you provide. For instance, streets and sidewalks, when ranks last in this list, while again trash, fire department, and police services rank 1, 2, and 3. There is the first four categories are identical in terms of excellent ratings and how they rank 1, 2, 3, 4, and how these services rank combined 1, 2, 3, 4. They also rank the same way when you combine the categories. But note that the fourth rating, though, police services is third, ranked 60.1% excellent. The next category down is 38.6% city parks. That's quite a drop. If you go down even further, you get to building permits and inspections, which never does well in cities, by the way. Ranked 8th, 21.9% excellent, 53.9% good. That's not bad, okay, really. But recreational services, and I'm going to come back to this more and more because this is the chief focus of this poll. Recreational services ranks 9th, code enforcement 10th, and recreational facilities ranks last in terms of an excellent rating, receiving only 16%. So pollsters would refer to these findings as discriminatory findings, meaning that they do show discriminatory not in any negative sense as we usually think of it, it's such as racial discrimination. It just simply means that methodologically there is a difference in the findings, so that the categories are discriminating. When you look at the highest rank, 63.9% excellent, and then you look at the last two, code enforcement and recreational facilities, both scored only 16.0. Code enforcement ranked 10th only because the combined category was higher than the combined category for recreational facilities. If we compare these findings with table number 2, and here's a benchmark. I ranked ordered the services from the 2011 Creve Coeur poll. And what we see here are, again, you see police services ranked high, but, Brentwood ranks even higher on police services. And if you look down the list, most of these services rank a little higher in Creve Coeur, but not all of them. And you need to carefully look and see which ones don't, such as building permits and inspections rank lower in Creve Coeur. Street repair ranks not very high in both communities. A lot of them are not identical. There's a difference between street repair, I suppose, and even when you use this word like street maintenance, it carries a slightly different connotation. However, turning to parks and recreation now, you can't help but see that, and I make comparisons to Kirkwood as well, that Kirkwood receives, as well as Creve Coeur, considerably higher ratings than does Brentwood on recreational services and recreational facilities. It's my obligation to bring that bad news along with the good news. It means that clearly recreational services and facilities need some attention. Of course, throughout this entire survey, it was clear that residents recognize this. I would argue that residents, when they were ranking, for instance, the community center and so forth, or ranking the services overall, I should say, that they had in mind the rec center. If we look at, let's go with graph 5, where I start getting into recreational questions. I wanted to find out, first of all, the use of Brentwood's community center in the past year, and 47.8% said never, and 35.1% said 1 to 9 times. Now, I want to give you some foreshadowing here. Pollsters cross-tabulate, and one of the reasons you ask demographical questions is we cross-tabulate questions such as use of the facility by whether or not later on people are willing to fund the renovations of the facility. And of course, you can pretty much guess, you wouldn't know the statistics exactly, but you could pretty much guess that people who are not using the facility, saying never, or using it hardly at all 1 to 9 times. And by the way, some of those people who reported they use it 1 to 9 times, they said they used it to vote. So that must be kept in mind as well. Now, when we cross-tabulated, we found out that people who use the facility never or rarely 1 to 9 times in a whole calendar year, they also were the most likely to not favor funding the renovation of the community center, or favoring, for instance, as a tax to obtain funds to fund it, favoring use taxes, for example. And that, of course, would make sense because pollsters find when you look at taxes, people, by and large, protect their own turf and vote for taxes that would most likely hit them the least. So they vote for such things as use taxes if they're not going to use the facility. They vote for business taxes. They vote for instance, rental car taxes. We didn't have that on there, but that's very popular with people because they figure outsiders will pay for it. They even vote for things like, or favor things like sales taxes, because even though they know they will pay sales taxes, they know that the sales taxes will be shared. So they would much more favor sales taxes than, for instance, property taxes, which the Gallup poll reports has consistently reported for decades as the most dreaded of all taxes by Americans. When you levy a property tax, of course, most taxes here are for, for the school district, but when property taxes are levied, a bond issue is passed which attaches a tax to the property taxes. People have to pay the whole bill. And so that's why property taxes are frequently unpopular for when communities go for renovating firehouses, city hall, recreation centers, and so forth. Now, this is a very telling statistic, and particularly when you benchmark. Graph 6 shows the perceived adequacy of Brentwood's community center. Now, what you almost never find, really, is where over 50% of the people say, give it a thumbs down rating. And that's what happened in this poll. It was hardly above, frankly, it was hardly above 50%, but it was above 50%. 39.3% said fair and 11.0% poor. I provided benchmarks on how people rated Kirkwood's facilities and Creve Coeur facilities, as well as some experience in looking at these statistics nationally. You would have to say that residents, no question, are concerned about the adequacy of the community center. And not only 10.5% rated it excellent. Now, you know, compare that to all the excellent ratings you're getting for other things, and you can see that that's a pretty low rating for, excellent rating for the community center. Now, I ask another question, and it's sort of a wish list, and it's displayed on page 23, table 3. Features Brentwood residents would most like to see included in Brentwood's community center if renovated. And in terms of most like, it was rated from most like, dislike, and most dislike to see in the community center. And you know, planners should look at this list rather carefully because if you do renovate it, it means that this would be very helpful in prioritizing the wish list of citizens because you only can pay for so much. The most like rated in terms of the most like rating, indoor running, walking tracks, you know, came in first, or track came in first. However, when combined, it got a 4 rating. The second was weight cardiovascular equipment room. That came in second, but when combined, it came in 5th. So there's a lot of bouncing around here. Area for young children of parents using community center facilities came in third in both rankings. Interactive playground for young children, including slides, tunnel, etc. That came in 4th, but came in 8th when combined. Senior activity center came in, or room came in 5 in the most like category, but came in 2nd when combined. The ice rink, indoor ice skating rink, came in 6th, but 11th when combined. And I will get back to that and make more comments on that because we asked a few questions on the ice rink. The fitness equipment area came in 7th, but 9th when combined. Aerobics dance fitness room came in 8th, 10th when combined. Most of these ratings are, you know, somewhat in the ballpark with each other. Not a teen recreational room, for example, for ping pong, video, and other games, came in 9th when rated by most liked and 7th when combined. This is the most interesting one, however. Multi-purpose space for classes, meetings, parties, etc., came in 10th when in the most liked category, but came in 1st when combined. And gym for basketball, volleyball, etc., came in last, or 11th, but 6th when combined. Now, graph 7 shows the support in principle for modernizing Brentwood's community center. There is enormous support for that in principle. This is a favorite question I ask for communities. They'd like to ask, first of all, in principle, do you favor something? And people normally do favor something in principle. When you ask whether or not they're willing to pay for it, that becomes a totally different question because now it's put in perspective. Graph 7 shows then that in principle, Brentwood residents are overwhelmingly in favor of modernizing the community center. 34.7% said very supportive, and 60.1% said supportive. only 11.7% said unsupportive, and only 3.5% said very unsupportive. Now, what I'm leading up to is that, because it's easier to put it this way, to put it in perspective, what I'm really leading up to is that Brentwood residents are for renovating, in principle, the community center by a large, comfortable majority. However, other questions show that they're not very comfortable, at least at this time, in paying for it. So one of the reasons for that is that Brentwood residents, as Graph 8 shows, are overall satisfied with the park cooperative program. 28.4% reported very satisfied, and 55.6% reported satisfied. Only 14.3% said dissatisfied, and only 1.6% said very dissatisfied. So that combines for only 15.9% say they're either dissatisfied or very dissatisfied with the park cooperative program. Now, another question was asked related to the park program, asking residents what do they favor, continuing to subsidize the park program or devoting resources to modernizing the community center. That was broken down into two individual answers: continue to subsidize or devote resources to modernizing the community center. A very, very hefty plurality of people, 48.7%, said continue to subsidize this program. Only 30.3% said devote resources to modernizing the facility. 21% were undecided. Now, to upholster all of this comes together, it all seems to make sense, because now the next question, Graph 10, what is the preferred method for paying for renovating the community center? So if it were renovated and it had to be paid for, what method of payment would you most prefer? Okay, first of all, 21.2% right off the bat said they're not in favor of spending any money to renovate. Now, that clashes sharply with people who are willing to pay property taxes to fund it, 100% property taxes funded, only 2.1%. Again, what this table shows are people are watching their wallets, and they want to, and if it's funded, they want to do it in the way that hurts them the least. 25.1% said use 100% user fees to fund it. Now, of course, knows that it's not possible to fund such a such a program with just user fees, but that's what people did say. Another large plurality said use user fees with increased property taxes. In other words, mostly user fees with some property taxes. Again, you need to go to the questionnaire that's in the appendix to see the exact question. But 42% said using mostly user fees with some property taxes. 9.6% said more property taxes and some user fees. But combined, for the use of property taxes in any significant way, it only comes to 11.7%. Okay, here's the ball game right here, Graph 11. Willingness to pay increased property taxes to renovate the community center, in case you decided to float a bond issue to see whether or not residents would vote for a bond issue that would be adequate to fund the renovations or the modernization of the community center. Okay, this graph is quite revealing. 37.3% said they're not willing to pay more in property taxes. Now, the next category up is willing to pay up to $50 per year more in property taxes. And that would be 33.9%. That combined, of course, represents over 60%. 61, I think, what adds up to 61.2%. Favor not willing to pay any more in property taxes to paying only up to $50 per year more in property taxes. Another 17.7% said willing to pay $100 more per year for property taxes, but almost no one above that level. Only 3.7% for 150 or more, or up to 150 more per year. 3.7 up to $200 more per year. 2.1% up to $250 more per year in property taxes, and 1.5% up to more than $250 more in property taxes. But you can see from the graph very clearly that the support dies significantly after up to $50 more per year in property taxes, with again over 60% of your residents saying they're willing to pay nothing or only up to $50 more per year in property taxes. My conclusion on that is this. There was an interesting article published on taxes in Brentwood, and in the Political Fix by Paul Hampel, published in April 2013. He noted that property taxes in Brentwood just went up recently with a 10% by 10% for the school tax, and that taxes have gone up from $2.74 per $100 assessed valuation in 2007 to $3.95 per $100 assessed valuation in 2013. That's an increase, he said, of 44%. If you actually run the number as I did, it's actually 44.2% increase since 2007. I can tell you the anecdotal evidence for people not being in the mood to pay more in property taxes was the fact that my interviewers, virtually all of them, reported that they got an earful from residents on how much their property taxes had gone up in the last 5 years, and that they had noted to my interviewers that they had just voted in a 10% increase in property taxes on this for the school district. So my conclusion regarding a possible bond issue is that any significant bond issue involving more than $50 would probably fail, and possibly even the $50 one would fail at this time. Doesn't mean it would fail next year. It just means that right now, you know, the timing, I said it last Wednesday, the timing is pretty bad. Bad for this poll, and there's nothing wrong with asking the poll at this time at all. But as it happened, I was conducting a poll at the same time. Residents had just voted in a 10% increase in taxes because of the school district. So I wouldn't give it, frankly, much chance of passing. And to be honest with you, I'm usually pretty good on that. I've been hired by a lot of places to give my opinion on that, from communities to even casino gambling, and I've been quite accurate in my predictions, and even when to ask it. You know, whether you ask it in April or June special election, or on August primary, or a general election. And normally, by the way, you ask these kind of things, as you know, you ask them in an election where the least number of voters show up. And that's because people who vote when fewer people vote are the most fluent and most likely, quite frankly, to vote for school bond issues and such things as a bond issue on the rec center. The more people who vote, such as a general election, the more likely such a issue would be defeated, such as in primaries, but particularly in general elections. I mean, I'm talking about a presidential primary where a lot of people would turn out. As it is this year in 2013, relatively speaking, there's nothing going on. So it wouldn't be a bad time in a primary this time around to ask it, but I still doubt whether it would pass. Couple other.
Dr. Warren, I'm sorry, and I don't mean to interrupt, but could we possibly take a quick break and do a couple of our agenda items?
Sure.
Only because I got a couple people here who are on the clock, and I thought you were going to give a little bit shorter of a presentation, but we will pick this.
Well, actually, I was asked to do a long one.
Oh, well.
A comprehensive one. I was all for a short
That's
one.
fine, but if we could just pick it up in about 15 minutes, I just have at least one bill that or two bills that we need to get
I know
done.
I
because
have
the
about 2
attorneys-
minutes left, too.
Oh, if you only have 2 minutes, then that's
Seriously,
fine.
that's all I have.
Okay,
I'm
that's
going to
fine.
Brentwood trails, and all I'm saying is that people are in principle for, as Graph 12 shows, support for expanding walking, jogging, and biking trails. And on City Hall, there's support. The people are divided on City Hall, whether to move it or not. But if it was moved to save money, let's say to a renovated community center, people are all for it. And the same thing for moving the library to the community center, if it would save money. That's it.
Didn't mean it. I'm sorry. It's great information, and it was very well done. The skimming, I've been able to go through it, and we really do appreciate it. But so real quick, does anybody have any questions for Dr. Warren at this time? Alderwoman Saunders.
The only question I have is that, in your professional opinion, based on the poll, can you tell us what percentage of the population would want to sell City Hall, plus or minus
No, we didn't ask that.
3.7%?
We didn't ask that.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Warren. I didn't mean to interrupt. So, and again, what I'd like to do is at our next meeting, we'll schedule to start at 6 o'clock and have an hour dedicated to the rec center, and try to formulate some plan as we go forward.
Great.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, public hearing. We have none. Bids, there are none this evening as well. Next item, item 8, hearing of any matters of public interest upon anyone present. If anybody would like to address the Board of Aldermen, please come forward and give us your name and address.
Matt Saunders, 2326 Park Ridge Avenue. A while back, you'd mentioned you were doing merit raises for all the city employees. I was wondering what percentage of the actual raises budgeted went out. So if you had $50,000 budgeted for the raises, given you were only doing merit raises and you budgeted for 3% for everyone, what percentage of the raises did you actually pay out? So I just was curious if we actually did budget raises. Also, just a side note, according to Section 244 Order of Business at the meetings, my understanding is the bids are supposed to be opened here. The quotes of the bids aren't just supposed to be read. Is it more proper for us to actually open the bids in the meetings? That's what the section says. And I was just curious if we could start doing that instead of just reading out the bids out loud. They're supposed to be actually opened in the public setting here, according to that section. That was the question I have. Also, with the city, I got to call you out on this one, Bola. You last time they were asking you about the inventory, and you looked at all these people like they were crazy, and it was their job. Well, Section 2.3, and it's almost immediately in the municipal code of Brentwood, says you shall do the inventory and present it on December 31st of every year. It doesn't say the mayor has to ask you or the aldermen have to ask you. So I guess my question is, where's the inventory? I mean, I could sit here and say we've had $1 million worth of inventory stolen from us last year, and no one could debate that unless you can show me the inventory. And then it says it again under duties are, under your responsibility are city property. You shall talk to all the heads of the other departments and take a personal property inventory over $5,000. If anything has been sold this year, anything loaned, transferred, or any disposition of it, you're supposed to report that to them. And yet at the last meeting, you were blaming all of them for no inventory. I'm just a little concerned here because, I mean, that's your job. And I guess my question is, I mean, if you're not going to do your job, why should anyone else? I mean, do your people do their work, or do you let them get away with not doing anything? It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Peggy Slater. I live at 8726 Covington Court, and I am here to speak in support of the request by Boys Hope, Girls Hope to relocate their properties onto Madge Avenue. Just to take a minute, first I want to thank many of you. I've been participating in a number of open houses about the event, and I think you've all been there, and I want to thank you for your time. I've met a lot of people who are willing to give this whole issue the time it takes to learn and to get the facts, so we appreciate that. I've also seen a lot of misinformation and some misunderstanding, and there are just two in particular that I'd like to address. One is about the kids who are in this program. Many of you know that I worked for Boys Hope, Girls Hope many years ago at the national level. I left Boys Hope, Girls Hope to run a foster care program, and I just want to distinguish those two kinds of kids. The kids in foster care come from very broken homes, very serious things going on in the home environment that require them to leave in order to be safe. I can tell you that I would be in the very opposite position on this whole issue if we were talking about a foster care agency. And that is not because I care any less about those kids or think they deserve any less opportunity. I was a foster parent. I had a foster daughter in Brentwood with me. The difference is that because those kids have such significant issues, they do pose some risk to the neighborhood where there's a residential facility. Let me contrast that with the Boys Hope, Girls Hope kids. Those kids do not come from broken homes. They do not come from seriously troubled backgrounds. In fact, if that's their situation, they come from, I should clarify, they come from neighborhood situations that might not be safe. They come from families that may not be able to provide for them. They do not come from families that are traumatized by serious abuse or substance abuse. These are kids who have what makes the difference. What they have is at least one caring, loving adult as a consistent factor in their life. Research tells us that that's what makes the difference in a kid making it or not. So I want to be very clear about who those kids are because I've heard some misunderstanding around that, and I think it's important. There's been a lot of discussion, and I say I've learned a lot about all of this. The second thing I learned today was that there was concern about the number of nonprofits that exist in Brentwood already, and that there were a lot of nonprofits in the community and too many for a small community of 8,000 people to support. So I did a quick search on GuideStar, which if you're not familiar with it, is kind of a watchdog website that reports on nonprofits, holds their 990s. There are a couple different sites like that out in the community. But I did a quick search on nonprofits in the 63144 zip code, and I wanted to let you know that among those 20 that I found quickly, 5 of them have Brentwood in the name. That includes the Chamber of Commerce, the Teachers Association, the School District Building Corp, and this is kind of my favorite, the Brentwood High School Very Interested People Club. In addition to that, St. Mary Magdalene's on that list, the American Industrial Hygiene Association, the Lions, the Optimists, the American Legion, and Toastmasters. That's not to say there aren't some other direct service agencies. There are a few, actually some that I hadn't heard of. But I make that point to say that that's not the stereotypical service, direct service nonprofit that this community is being asked to support. So I wanted to clarify that. And my last point is just a request, and it goes along with my appreciation for the time and consideration that you've given this already. And my request is that in these discussions and in these meetings, I've heard the fire department issues raised, I've heard the rec center issues raised, and I think we all know that the issues with the financial burden that the school district is facing and the challenges of the tax county assessments have been in place many years, way before Boys Hope, Girls Hope came to this group. And I think it's safe to say that we're all going to be dealing with those issues for many, many years to come. And I just ask that you all take the approach that many of you have taken so far and not wrap up the Boys Hope, Girls Hope request in the fire department issues and the school district issues and really look at it for its merits, pros and cons alike. Thank you.
Karen Smith. I live on Harrison. I haven't had much time to actually look at these two bills that are in front of us in detail, but I had two questions about Bill 57, 54. This is the one for Gilmore and Bell. And so I guess the first question related to that is whether that went before Ways and Means. I was not able to make the last Ways and Means committee, but I did not see this on their agenda. And I'm curious what the certificate of participation is for. Is at the firehouse? And this bill deals with an arbitrage rebate liability. And I'm just curious why we got into that. I thought we had a certificate of participation for the firehouse, but I don't understand what this arbitrage rebate liability is. And I'm just wondering if that's the appropriate type of financing tool for the city to be involved in. And then I would like to know exactly what that liability is. I know Gilmore and Bell is going to calculate that, but will they be bringing that back to the public? And then on the other bill, 5756, that deals with Meridian. And of course, anything with Meridian, I am acutely sensitive to due to some of the transactions that have occurred related to that TDD and TIF up at Hanley and Eager Road. So again, did this go before Ways and Means? I'm questioning why we are deferring. I'm wondering if it's due to the lawsuit. And the amounts in this agreement, when I opened it, now I don't know if the ones that you all have in front of you, but the one that I have, the amounts are blank. And I don't know what that means. Why are they blank? I don't know if it would be appropriate for the Board of Aldermen to be approving a bill without knowing exactly what the financial liability would be. And in kind of skimming it, it looks like there's some obligations to the city. There's the 2007B reimbursement obligation, a 2007A reimbursement obligation. There's an interest differential. So I would be interested in knowing exactly what the dollar amount that this particular bill is obligating the city to. Are these items that we're being obligated to, are they already in our budget? So where's the dollars going to come from to pay for this? On both of these two agreements, again, I don't know quite how we got into some of these things. I think we probably need to look very closely at the recommendations and the advice that we're getting, and maybe start holding people that give us advice in some of these areas accountable as well, because I don't know that it's appropriate to be putting taxpayer money at risk like this. Thank you.
Denise Sebbing, 2612 Porter, and I just have a simple observation that going down Manchester Road coming here this evening, I've noticed that there's several vacant properties with their grass that's a good 9 to 12 inches tall. There's also the Manchester, a lot of the gravel on the road again. And also there's two spots not far from Public Works across the street, the north side of Manchester, where there's two big cones that have been there for over a month with holes that are about 2 foot long, not wide, but long. And, you know, if people are walking in those sidewalks as the weather starts getting nicer, people are going to slip and step in that and twist their ankles. So I'd hope that maybe somebody could have Public Works start going down and looking at some of those vacant properties and ask the owners to start cutting the grass because it's starting to look pretty bad. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lynn Devon. I'm at 2469 Lewis Avenue. And I haven't been reading the Pulse a lot lately because, well, I do taxes and I've been a little busy. So catching up on a few things, I noticed that there's a lot of debate about internal controls. And I just want to say, as a CPA and a former auditor, that I think the internal controls are really the start of where we make sure are in place to prevent any future fraud or any even perceived misappropriation of funds. So I'm glad to see that that's an item that will be looked into. And I have faith that bringing Gina Jarvis on board, her being a CPA as well, she knows the ropes on how to get some of those things in place. Being in a small system, a small community, sometimes, whether it's the government, an individual office, whatever the case may be, sometimes internal controls are never going to be perfect because you don't have enough people in the positions to be able to balance everything. You might not have 5 people in an office that one person is the only one that cuts checks and somebody else signs them, and then there's a second signature available, and some of the things that a larger entity would take for granted. But I think it's very important that internal controls are laid out, and I'm glad that you guys are talking about that. And so thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I will close public comment. I'll try to address a couple of these things. With respect to Manchester Road, I do know that notices have been sent out to a number of the businesses along Manchester Road with respect to the grass. I think a couple of them were cut actually over the weekend. Also found out that a number of the larger properties, or a couple of them anyway, are actually bank-owned now, which is another difficult problem, getting banks to react and take care of them. One in particular is Colt Safety's building. But they've been working with the banks trying to get them to do those things. I think that we would check on the cones, but I think that was actually a sewer project, and they let the gravel settle before they come in and do their additional work to fill in the concrete and so forth. So, but again, Manchester Road and Brentwood Boulevard are not roads that Brentwood actually maintains and takes care of, unfortunately. And it's very difficult to get MoDOT out here to do some of the things that we would want to do. But I'll be quite frank, if we start to do it, we'll never be able to stop with respect to some of that general maintenance along that corridor. And we have done it in the past before. We've actually gotten out and hosed down Manchester Road to get rid of the gravel. But it's just a very difficult and very time-consuming and expensive job to do that. With respect to the bills with Gilmore and Bell, and I'll just go over that real quickly, this is part of the settlement. They're both related to the Meridian project, and the funds that we are releasing is part of the settlement. We have been saving those funds since the first of the year. This is really to get the bonds that are being held by the bank right now back out into the market to reduce the interest rate so that some of the tax revenue goes to pay down principal instead of just paying interest rate. And this is an agreement that we entered into a year ago, September, 2 years ago, September, March, September 2011. It's an obligation that the city has agreed to, and we're just trying to do it so we can start to reduce some of that principal. With respect to the city administrator and the inventory, and I really don't think it's fair, and I will ask all residents when they come up to address the Board of Aldermen instead of specific employees with respect to the city. I don't think that's fair to do that to the city administrator. I can tell you that the inventory was talked about at Ways and Means a number of times last year, and how they wanted to proceed in hiring a firm in order to do that. It was not something that was in the budget last year. It is something that is in the budget this year, and it's something that we're moving forward with. It is something that's been discussed, and ultimately that becomes, when it comes to releasing those funds or allocating those funds, it becomes an obligation of this board in order to do that. And so if we don't get something accomplished at committee level, then staff can't do their job sometimes. And that's really what's happened at this point. It is something that's going to be done, and we'll get it taken care of. With that, I would ask for a motion for the first and second reading of bills number 5752, 5753, 5754, and 5756.
So
Okay,
moved.
excuse me. This is where, because I want to send the one back to Ways and Means. But I have one objection to that inventory comment. Since I've been on the board and on Ways and Means, the topic broached for the inventory was just this past Ways and Means.
Okay.
I mean, I just wanted to say that, though, just so that you don't think that we've been dilly-dallying with that for a year, because it was just raised when the threshold was introduced. Like, we talked about it all last meeting at the Board of Aldermen, moving it from 1,000 to 10,000. I brought it up, 3 residents. And then the next day when we went to Ways and Means, we were told it was a mistake, that Gina meant to keep it at 1,000. And then later in the meeting, Frank said he picked a number out of the air. So it's difficult for us to understand sometimes, too, what's going on. I would like to make a motion that we move Bill 5756 to Ways and Means. It's a complicated ordinance that came before us. A lot of the information is not provided within this bill. To me, it's a little bit different than even what was discussed. I think we had this talked about in closed session, so I was surprised the degree and the document itself. So I move that we move 5756 to Ways and Means.
I'll second the motion, Your Honor.
Okay, discussion. I think Mark incorrect. Mark Grimm is here. Mark, maybe if you can come up, you can answer some questions. Again, the idea is we are saving these funds in order to get to reduce the interest rate on these bonds. If we want to wait another couple of weeks on the interest rate on $20 million, then we'll pay that much more in interest. That's fine. Something that we've been working with the bank that's been holding it now going on since November. But the reason that the numbers are blank, and Mark, please correct me if I'm wrong, but those won't be placed in there until the actual day that you're going to execute it. But roughly, and I will turn it over to you.
Right, I mean, interest is accruing daily, and principal can change depending on when it's executed as to payment date. So the mayor's correct. I mean, we can certainly give you the numbers as of today, but they'll change tomorrow, and they'll change the day after that. And so there have not been any substantive changes to the agreement in in several weeks. I'd be happy to answer any questions about the agreement. I don't think the agreement is any different from what we discussed in executive session.
Alderwoman Saunders.
First of all, if this has been going on since November, this is the first that I've seen this document or any draft of it. And this is not part of the settlement agreement. You may be executing it for another reason, but this is not part of the settlement agreement, correct?
Well, the settlement agreement requires the city to contribute a portion of the bottom half revenues to the payment of the debt. Mm-hmm. And since January 1, 2012, in furtherance of the settlement agreement, the city has been escrowing those funds. And so this agreement would provide for the release of those escrowed funds and have those go toward the payment of the debt.
So then Section 13 on page 9, the interest differential of the obligation.
Right.
So does that relieve us? I mean, in essence, are we actually guaranteed that we'll save this interest? It seems like they've always got us on the hook for it.
Well, the interest, the city's only obligation is to repay funds from the incremental revenues that are being pledged, that are already pledged under the settlement agreement to the repayment of the bonds. So the city's obligation doesn't change. So
Okay.
the city's paying that 57.65%. One way or the other. It's a question of whether it's paid now or whether it's paid later.
Plus any
And
shortfall. So what benefit do we get here as the city? I know you're reducing the interest rate, but
Yeah.
we're not off the hook for it because...
Not off the hook, no. The benefit is twofold. Number one, it'll pay down principal. More money will be available for the payment of principal on the bonds. Okay, so, and I think the city's litigation counsel, Thompson Coburn, believes that that will facilitate implementation of the settlement agreement. By paying down principal, it'll make the deal work better and will enhance the likelihood of the refunding that's contemplated by the settlement agreement being expedited. So I'm not the city's litigation counsel, but that's what litigation counsel has advised. They believe this will expedite the settlement of the transaction.
This seems to benefit the developer to me more than it does us at the back end, and they haven't fulfilled their section of the obligation agreement. And just like on the opening page, section 2, there's referenced in section 1 finance documents and supplemental finance documents, which we don't have. We don't even have them to look at within this agreement.
Excuse
Okay.
me. I mean, there's no other documents being executed at this time.
Okay, then I guess I'm misunderstanding then. Page 3, let's see, definitions 1, in section 1, that paragraph down there.
That's referring to documents that were already executed in connection with the bond issue.
Okay, so that's hard
So
because also too, right above where it says, by entering into this agreement, the city is not waiving any claims, rights, or damages against the developer or any other party, including but not limited to claims, so forth, any provision of the financing documents or the supplemental financing documents.
Well, the financing documents are defined on page 4 to be the reimbursement agreement, the indenture, the cooperation agreement, and the redevelopment agreement, all of which were entered into in 2007. And then supplemental financing documents are the two documents that are approved by this ordinance.
Means collectively this agreement, the home office payment, and the cities. Okay, and then can I ask you, why did you prepare this? Is this your?
Well, we prepared it in conjunction with
negotiations,
QTAC Rock, which is counsel to Compass Bank.
On page 9 in section 11, why do we have a no recourse call here? No recourse shall be had for the payment of the city's obligation hereunder or for any claim based hereon against any past, present, or future member of the Board of Aldermen of the city or any trustee, officer, official, and so forth.
Right. That
Why
protects
are
you
we-
from personal liability.
Well, but we're protected regardless, so I mean, I don't understand.
Well, this says that as a result of the board's approval of this agreement, Compass Bank cannot sue you, bring a lawsuit against you. That's what that says. But we can delete it if you desire. I don't.
Well, I mean,
wouldn't
I've
I
never
don't think
seen
you're-
that. I've never seen that before.
That's in every document that, I mean, it's a common.
So, okay, so can you point that out for me in the reimbursement? I mean, can you tell me that it's in the reimbursement agreement, the initial
Yeah,
things?
I guarantee you there's a provision that says no board member will have any personal liability as a result of doing that deal.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's a very complicated document. I don't think it was that. I thought it was going to be a lot more straightforward based on executive session, and I'd like to see that it goes to, I mean, if we've waited this long and like you say, it's just going to pay it down, I'd like to see it go to Ways and Means.
Well, again, I mean, by going to Ways and Means, I would just ask you to ask the questions here. You know, it isn't going to change anything. We're going to release the funds so that the bonds, so we can reduce the interest rate on the bonds. It is complicated, but then at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. And so we're going to pay down more principal than pay interest. Right now, we're paying, the bonds are paying interest of about 7.5%.
Yeah, prime plus 4.
So we're going to be reducing that down to less than 2.
But we're still responsible for that differential,
We're only,
correct?
no, we're not responsible for it. That's what the interest rate is going to be.
Well,
Right.
the interest, right. I mean, the interest differential eventually will be made up, but in the meantime, principal is paid down. So you've got principal accruing interest at a. So if you have more principal repaid, you're accruing less interest.
Right. But at the end of the day, I mean, you're right. I mean, we could do nothing. And at the end of the day, when the clock stops ticking on the TIF after 23 years, who's ever holding those bonds, whether it's a developer or the bank, when they finally get done with their debate, one of those is going to be holding the bonds. Our obligation at that point stops. Because we stopped collecting sales tax, or we stopped collecting the revenues, and the taxes stopped going to pay towards that TIF. But this, again, as explained by our bond counsel, Thompson and Coburn, in executive session, is a step forward in trying to show that the city's doing everything they can to make this work. And it's money we've already been saving for. We're already obligated to pay it, and all we're going to be doing is reducing the interest rate so it pays back more principal. Alderman Leahy, you had a question.
If I may, Mark, help educate me because I too am confused. The whole premise of the settlement agreement was to get all three parties back on the same page. And now...
Actually, 4 parties, but
Okay,
yes.
4 parties. And now MDC is complaining... DCM, pardon me. Dyslexic, I apologize. Is complaining that the bonds, if we reissued them, would be at much higher rate than they thought they would have been at. Thus, they're hesitant to contribute their portion to buy the bonds that we would be reissuing.
That's one of the claims that they've
Okay.
made in the litigation,
Now,
right?
if we, the city, initiate this action, and we are authorizing your office to go and reissue these bonds, does this agreement obligate DCM to put up their money to buy that portion of the bonds?
Well, actually, this does not result in a reissuance of the bonds.
This does not.
Compass Bank, which is the letter of credit bank, would continue to hold the bonds.
Mhm.
Okay? This lowers the interest rate while the bonds are held by Compass Bank. The rate would be lowered basically through the end of the year. The trial to enforce the settlement agreement is scheduled for December.
Okay.
And so it's essentially a lowering of the interest rate until the settlement agreement's implemented or the end of this year. And again, I think this Thompson Coburn, as litigation counsel of the city, has advised that they believe that this is in the A, it doesn't cost the city any more money, and B, that it will further the city's interests by showing the judge that the city is doing everything it can to implement the settlement agreement.
Why is that action necessary if we are not an active party in the current disagreement over the settlement agreement? We've already said we will do X, Y, Z when you all put up your cash and we reissue the bonds. To have us do actions while these parties are still trying to get to the same page seems premature.
Well, I think the thought is that if it doesn't cost any more money, and if it furthers the settlement of the litigation, that's a good thing. But
Well,
obviously, the
in
board
my
can-
opinion, this settlement agreement does cost the city more money. We've agreed to give up some of the bottom half that we originally didn't have to give up in order to get to the settlement agreement.
Right.
Now, if DCM is successful at contesting that the settlement agreement is, well, let's just say all parties didn't come to the same understanding, and we're back into the position of having to work out a new settlement agreement, would our actions put us at a weaker position at moving forward since we're back to already spending city money?
Well, I'm not here to advise you on litigation strategy, and that's
Okay.
That's you've got separate counsel for that, and you've got a city attorney who can advise you on litigation strategy.
Right.
I'm repeating what
But
has been
Thompson
said.
Coburn said that they felt that this was in the best interest of the city.
Right.
I just feel like, I guess I was thinking that it was going to be something a little bit different, that I didn't realize that interest differential was going to be in here. So I misinterpreted what they said. But regardless, to me, this seems like it gives the developer less incentive because it helps them out some as opposed to us. And we've done everything with regards to the settlement agreement that we're supposed to do. And they had a personal guarantee, and they're still suing us. So I just don't.
Well,
I don't think it's necessary.
we're a necessary
Plus,
party in
there's
the
11
lawsuit, but they're
the-
suing Compass Bank.
Thompson Coburn's litigation bill from March is 11,000, or on the list is 11,000, and I'm not sure what your bill will be for this too. But we keep incurring cost after cost after cost, and we've done our part.
And this is a step in that direction to finalize the actions that the city agreed to take. Alderman Leahy.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mark, if we go ahead and institute this agreement and things go south in the courts that we end up having to either renegotiate a settlement agreement or we end up in a trial over this whole litigation to figure out who's right, who's wrong. Is there anything in the current document you've provided us that gets this money back to the city pending a new outcome of court jurisdiction of what we have to follow? Or are we spending, we got it done, we got the lower interest rate, we paid the banks have spent their money, and sorry, there's no way to recoup it?
Well, this does not say the city is forever going to contribute that 57.65%.
Understand.
It's a temporary thing through the end of this year, basically.
But if everything goes south, even on the 31st of December.
Yeah, the obligation
but
ends.
Money I spent doesn't get reaccredited to a formula for a settlement.
Right. Well, you're
So-
right. For 9 months or
Yeah.
6 months worth,
So
right?
the mayor's contention, we can spend the interest on $20 million today and try to get things lower, or we can do it later and incur more cost and still have the interest at the high end. But if I spend it now and then the judge, for whatever reason, in their infinite wisdom, send us in a whole nother direction, the city has spent money that if we would have gone slower and waited for the court direction,
Well,
we may not have gotten a wasted investment.
well,
And forgive me on the term, those are my terms.
I understand, and I'm not here to advise you on litigation strategy. You've hired folks to advise you on that, and you're welcome to either, take their advice or not take their advice.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Your
But
Honor.
we're only obligated for the sales tax revenue for the terms of this TIF. And so, it can go south, but whatever you mean by that. But right now, the lawsuit is really between DCM and the bank. We are a
Correct.
necessary party because we collect the taxes and are involved with the agreements. But it's really a lawsuit between those two entities.
Yes.
This is from the other lawsuit, that we have settled and we have agreed to, and this is what we agreed to do. And
But
again, I think our legal counsel was advising us is that this is something that they think is in the best interest of the city, is what they told
But
us.
the terms that we've agreed to, Your Honor, the major player is balking and trying to void that whole settlement agreement.
But they're only doing it with the terms of between the bank and them, who's going to pay, end of the day, who's going to own the bonds. And so, again, you can make this as complicated as you want. If you want to see the documents today, you sign all this. It's probably,
Oh,
1,000 pages.
We got a 6 notebook.
So, but what this is going to do is reduce the interest rate from what is basically, and right now, I mean, to tell you the truth, the bank gets that interest.
Yes, as a
So
default payment.
right. So in essence, the bank is giving up that revenue of basically 7.5% interest on $20 million, that penalty that we're paying because they have to own the bonds. Again, this is very complicated, and reducing it back down to that less than 2%. So, then some of that money can go to pay down principal instead of paying the bank, who right now recoups that money. So,
One last question
Yes.
for our bond counselor. Currently, Mark, we are in the settlement agreement. We have guaranteed a 57% and/or a ceiling based on revenues coming in from the project itself.
Right.
At present, have we reached the ceiling, or are we going to end up, or have we reached the 57% level, or are we going to end up hitting the ceiling because the revenues aren't there?
Have to,
I'd have
I
to,
don't know.
probably Gina
I had
would
the
have to
same
calculate. Have
on-
we even looked at that yet this year, or?
On page 6, are you asking what the shortfall, like do the 285 is that?
No.
No.
Oh, okay. That's
The
what I
trick
wanna
is
know.
that you're putting money in escrow,
Right.
and you're willing to now put it back towards paying down this. But at this point, over last 2 years, have the revenues from the project reached the point that we're paying the 57% level, or did they only generate so much that we have to go and hit the ceiling?
yeah, that's the minimum. It's last
And thus,
year's
what we're
2012.
putting in escrow may not be sufficient enough to cover the bill.
No. Well, go ahead, Gina.
Go ahead, Gina.
For 2012, the minimum was 285, and we did meet that minimum. So that's what's in escrow
Okay.
through 2012, and then we have 4 months worth for
Of 13 working
2013.
out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So,
Oh, and I had a question still. On page 7, and that's what I wanted to know the same. So we had to go up to the 285 for 2012. Did the 57.65 result in more than 285, or do we have to come up?
that's a minimum, right?
Oh, that's the minimum, I'm sorry.
We reached that level, right?
Less than the amount set forth below.
The 57 points, is it 65? 57.65 was less than 285, so we had to go up to the 285.
Do you know what that amount was to go up, though? What we had to contribute to go up?
I don't, off the top of my head.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
that's what I was wondering. And then on page 7 of this agreement, section 5, item B, what, except for defaults or events of defaults that occurred prior to the settlement agreement, including the city's failure to reimburse the bank for the 2007 reimbursement obligation. And what is that?
Right.
I didn't understand that.
Well, the agreement, one of the agreements between, with Compass Bank as a result of the transaction is called a reimbursement agreement. And that agreement is with the city. And then there are other agreements where the city passes through its obligations under that reimbursement agreement to the developer. And so this references the city's failure to reimburse, but it's from monies provided by the developer. So there's no allegations that the city failed to reimburse from city funds. The reimbursement obligation is an obligation of the developer passing through to the city, or passing through the city.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd be happy to withdraw my second on postponing Bill 5756 to go back to committee.
Okay. Is there a second?
No, I'll withdraw my
Okay.
motion to send.
All right, thank you. So now, can I have a motion for first and second readings of bills number 5752, 5753, 5754, 5755, and 5756?
So moved.
Second, Your Honor.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. First reading of bill number 5752, please.
First reading bill number 5752 by title only, an ordinance granting site plan approval for a signage plan for the Meridian development, amending the signage plan approved by ordinance number 4082, providing for the enforcement of this ordinance, and establishing the effective date of this ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Synopsis?
Yes, if you want to read them, please.
Synopsis for Bill 5752 is a Meridian Site Plan Amendment. This bill is for an ordinance granting a site plan approval for a signage plan for the Meridian development and the amending the site plan approved by ordinance 4082. At its April 11, 2012 meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission asked the petitioner, Eager Road Associates, to develop a comprehensive sign plan for the entire Meridian site, including both existing and any proposed signage. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommends approval of the Meridian signage plan.
Thank you. Any questions? There is a representative here, if anybody. Okay. Second reading, please.
Second reading bill number 5762 by title only, an ordinance granting site plan approval for a signage plan for the Meridian development, amending the signage plan approved by ordinance number 4082, providing for the enforcement of this ordinance and establishing the effective date of this ordinance.
Thank you. Alderman Leahy.
Clarification, if I may. Because this is a planned development area, they do not fit under the sign codage in the code itself. They get to come up with what they feel is an appropriate way of signage for their development with the hope of attracting both businesses and customers to get in and work through. Planning and zoning looks at it, we look at it, and the developer says, this is the best I can do to help make my thing. We have previously worked with this group, and we'd agreed to the postage or the little squares up on the garage and all that. this will change that agreement and make those all null and void.
No, they're still all in place. This is an addition to that. And Ellen, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think the reason that we asked them to come up with a comprehensive plan was so that they didn't have to come back all the time to make the changes. But I'll turn it over to you. So.
That's correct, and the button signs have actually been removed from the plan.
Thank you. The button signs did come out.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank
Okay.
you. All right. By the way, welcome back, Mom.
All right.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. Do we have a motion, please?
Second reading.
We had second reading. Did
First.
we had second? Did we?
Second.
Did we?
Did we have second reading? Yes.
Yes.
Oh, well.
Your Honor, I move for adoption.
Second.
Second.
Motion was made by Alderman Robertson, seconded by Alderman Harper. Roll call, please.
Alderman Harper.
Yes.
Alderman Nguyen.
Yes.
Alderman Robertson.
Yes.
Alderman Tui.
Yes.
Alderman Leahy.
Yes.
Alderwoman Manister.
Yes.
Alderwoman Saunders.
Yes.
Bill number 5752 is now ordinance number 4426.
Thank you. Bill number 5753, please.
First reading, Bill number 5753 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the city administrator to execute a second amendment to the medical director agreement between the city of Brentwood, Missouri, SSM Healthcare St. Louis, and Clayton Emergency Group, LLC.
Synopsis, please.
Synopsis for Bill 5753, the Medical Director's Service Agreement. This bill is for an ordinance authorizing the mayor and/or the city administrator to enter into and execute the Second Amendment to the agreement with SSM Healthcare St. Louis and Clayton Emergency Group, LLC. Due to the absence of a quorum, the Public Safety Committee did not meet. The bill's sponsor is Chairman of the Public Safety Committee, Alderman Lee Nguyen. The current agreement expires on May 21st, 2013.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any questions? Second reading, please.
Second reading, Bill number 5753 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the city administrator to execute a second amendment to the medical director agreement between the city of Brentwood, Missouri, SSM Healthcare St. Louis, and Clayton Emergency Group, LLC.
Okay.
One question, if I
Alderman
may,
Leahy.
Your Honor, and if I may, direct it to the fire chief with your permission. Chief, this is just extending the current agreement that we have in place with them, but any resident using our emergency facilities, and specifically the ambulance, still has the option of to where they normally can go for care, as long as we're not too far outside our own service area.
That's correct. Nothing changes as far as where we transport. This simply is to continue our medical director for protocols and oversight for our emergency medical service.
This agreement is they provide, they work with our paramedics, EMTs,
Yes, correct.
and then to give them training and
Training and medical direction and
Yes.
protocols and so forth.
nothing to do with patient. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Motion.
Motion to perfect Bill 5753 into ordinance form, Your Honor.
And second. Motion is made by Alderman Leahy, second by Alderman Nguyen. Roll call, please.
Alderman Harper.
Yes.
Alderman Nguyen.
Yes.
Alderman Robertson.
Yes.
Alderman Tui.
Yes.
Alderman Leahy.
Yes.
Alderwoman Manister.
Yes.
Alderwoman Saunders.
Yes.
Bill number 5753 is now ordinance number 4427.
Okay, if, I'm going to go out of order here just so we can do the two Gilmore bill ones at the same time. So if I can first read a bill number 5755, please.
First reading, Bill number 5755 by title only, an ordinance amending Chapter 5 Animals and Fowl of the Revised Code of the City of Brentwood, Missouri by amending Article 1 in general, providing for the raising of chickens in the city limits.
Okay. Synopsis, please.
Your Honor, if I may, can we have discussion?
Well, synopsis first.
So synopsis we can do, sir. Bill 5755 is Backyard Chicken Update. This bill is an ordinance amending Chapter 2, 4, and 5 of the Municipal Code to allow backyard chickens. The amendment includes Section 200.20, Section 210.10, Section 210.40, Section 210.60, Section 210.90, 210.100, 220.10, 220.20, 220.30, 400.20, 400.1870, and Chapter 500, Animal and Fowl. Public Works Committee recommends approval.
Okay. Discussion.
Your Honor, if I may. What I've passed out to the Board of Aldermen, and forgive me for my chicken scratch on it, are a list of those sections that we just cited in this code, that in comparing the new proposed Brentwood codes, these sections all have to be changed to address code enforcement if we allow chickens as in the city of Brentwood. At current, reading this current bill, if a complaint came in and the city operated under the fastest means reasonably possible, the complainant would have to wait 3 weeks prior to a formalized decision being made on how to correct the problem. And normally, if that worst case scenario would be removal of the chickens from the owner who has them, you then have whatever time that takes to get taken care of before the complaining party becomes satisfied. The groups that have helped the Board of Aldermen and the committees in looking at this chicken issue are probably the exception. They are wonderful people. They have a great love for their animals, and they would take an absolute great care of making sure that their facilities don't cause problems. The dilemma that we have in the code is the person who decides to try to go into chicken working and harvesting of eggs and ends up creating a problem for everybody. I suggest that before we pass this bill, that we literally go back and address each of these codes and cite what those changes should be in them so that your inspectors have some tools to be able to enforce and help resolve problems, versus the code that we currently have may not help them get it through, and the municipal judge may not be able to rule in an expedient manner to get us where we need to be.
Well, actually, under this ordinance, if I'm reading it, this wouldn't go to the judge. It would go to, if you look at Section 3, permit revocation under sections may be for the appeals process. But under that process, the resident would have to appeal within 5 days of giving notice that their permit was being revoked. The appeal shall be determined following a hearing by the city administrator or his or her designee, and at least 5 days notice of the hearing shall be given to the property owner by certified mail. So
the quickest process is 21 days, the quickest. If things operated in normal mode.
And what's the issue with that?
The trick is if you have a complaining party,
right,
you have done nothing to help resolve his complaint.
So do you think that's going to be faster if we send it to court?
No, I'm saying that your code does not give you all the answers to go. Your current code does not address a nuisance problem by chicken.
But
there is no nuisance
but
code.
If it violates the stipulations of this ordinance, that is the nuisance.
But your nuisance code doesn't address that.
But it's here. If they violate any of the things within here in this ordinance, then those are the violations.
I understand what you're saying, sir. The dilemma is that this is where it all would get dragged out. And while it's dragged out looking for a clear resolution, I still have a complaining party and potentially a owner that may have to give up their livestock, which they may not be excited about doing either type arrangement. I think the bill is not crafted correctly enough.
Okay. Well,
Would you like to hear from staff?
sure.
Lisa?
Good evening. I'm Lisa Kirkemeyer, and I was filling in for Ellen while she was on maternity leave. So one of the last assignments that I was tasked with while I was filling in for Ellen was to research and draft an ordinance permitting the raising of chickens in the backyards of single-family residences here in Brentwood. So I'm hoping all this information was in your meeting packet. The document entitled Chicken Ordinance Review, that was included actually at the Public Works Committee. We distributed that, discussed it. And for the board members that were at the Public Works Committee on April 10th, I believe that meeting occurred, we reviewed our research sources, and then the guidelines, we went over, the guidelines that we were proposing to use to craft the ordinance. So what is proposed in this ordinance, which permits the keeping of up to 6 chickens in the backyards of the single-family residents here in city limits of Brentwood. There are several conditions in the ordinance that are included to eliminate potential nuisances that could be caused by chickens. Things that noise, odor, unsanitary conditions, and perhaps chickens roaming like on public right-of-way or other people's property. So if all of these conditions are met that are included in the ordinance, then a resident may secure a permit from the Planning and Development Department to house the chickens. So under the proposed ordinance, there would be the standard fee of $50 to initially secure and process the permit, and for the initial inspection of the property to see how the chickens will be kept. The permit process, as it is proposed right now, would not require a resident to notify adjoining neighbors of their intent to secure a permit to keep chickens, but initiating some form of permitting process for the city would allow the city to have knowledge of who has chickens, acquire the contact information of the owner, and also authorizes the city officials at any reasonable time and in any reasonable manner to follow up on nuisance complaints, to go ahead onto the premises and inspect to see if there is a violation of the nuisance ordinance. If the Director of Planning and Development determines that there is a violation of any of these conditions stated in the section of this code, like in Chapter 5, the permit would be revoked. The process to revoke the permit is included in the ordinance, and I think that was pretty well just outlined here. Permit revocations then may be appealed to the city administrator, but the intent is if violations come up to deal with them swiftly and fairly and eliminate the problem by an internal process. So again, the recommendation here is to only permit this activity through Chapter 5. So that would take care of not having to go through the court system to address it. At the Public Works Committee meeting, though, staff did receive the list of potential amendments and repeals of the various sections of the municipal code, which is, I think, what you're referring to. And so relative to the review, I also prepared a memo dated April 23rd to Ms. Laconde, and hopefully, again, that was in your packets, with the outcome of that review. And, again, I believe that if the Board of Aldermen want to approve keeping the chickens in the backyards of residents here in Brentwood, that the requirements and the permitting process for this activity just be included solely in Chapter 5, which is the animal and fowl section, just as it's addressed now by prohibiting the activity. You're changing that out. So if any adjustments would need to be made in the future, then again, they could just be addressed by amending Chapter 5. So that's what's being proposed. So I think, if I can just say then in summary, the drafting of this ordinance, I think, took a very conservative approach. It limits the number of chickens to 6 or less. It develops several conditions that must be met the entire duration that the chickens are kept. And it also, I think, came up with a fairly simple permitting process to keep everything on track. And as I said, deal with any nuisances resulting from keeping the chickens to, a very swift and effective way to do that. So I don't think it would be, unduly burdensome to staff. So that's kind of where we're at now. So.
Okay, Alderman Lay.
If I may, Lisa, I'm reading page 2 of 4. I'm looking under section 5.8, number 8. No person shall keep chickens in any manner so as to create a nuisance, as defined in Chapter 16 of the City Municipal Code. In Chapter 16 of the City Municipal Code, chickens are not mentioned whatsoever, nor is anything that relates to their well-being and keeping. So thus, I cannot be cited for a nuisance in anything related to having chickens.
If there are any other type of nuisance violations that Chapter 16 captures that could be seen or construed as a connection to keeping of the chickens, then all that does is strengthen your ability to go after and cite that violation. But again, Chapter 5 is to stand on its own, and all of the different violations that could possibly come up are actually directly, put into Chapter 5. So I think, again, the reference to Chapter 16 just strengthens it, but isn't really even necessary. So.
What would be in 16? Would that be like?
Barking dogs.
Or, well, noise, right?
But
Right.
barking, it says barking. Chickens don't bark. If I don't have a barking chicken, I can't cite you for a nuisance. So my neighbor complaining about the noise, I can't have my inspectors go in and correct it. You get into this trouble.
I guess it's just a legal question then, if you think it's been prepared. But
Chapter 16 does have a general nuisance provision, so basically, anything that disturbs your neighbors is something that we could cite as a nuisance violation. I think it's 16.1 or 16.2.
Alderman Nguyen?
Well, I like one thing that Andy said to begin with. All these people that have come up here are going to do the right thing. They're interested in it. We have a dog ordinance, and most of the people take care of their dogs. But we always have some that don't. And I don't care what procedure, you're not going to get these. I've worked with a lot of these things. You're not going to get this thing to work like you think it will work. It's going to drag out. They're going to find loopholes. They're going to find ways to get around it. It's going to be slow getting there. I just see a lot of I personally don't want chickens next door to me. If the law passes, I'll have chickens, and that's okay, because I believe in following the law. But I really don't want to live next to chickens. And so I tell what my vote will be. But anyway, that's my thought is these people that want to have chickens, I have no question, like Andy, that they're going to do a great job, and probably others are going to do a great. But I've been in this alderman job now 22 years, bad or good, and so many things we say we got it solved, and we don't have it solved. We got so many things to work out. So I'd rather hold it a little longer, which Andy was talking about doing, maybe solve some of my problems, so I wouldn't think that way. But at this point in time, I'm not ready to have chickens next door to me.
Your Honor, if I may.
Alderman Lay.
Lisa, for your edification for where we're going, we went to the state of Hawaii in September of last year. State of Hawaii, along with the state of Missouri and all of the other 50 states, are under the federal law for wildlife fowl protection. In the state of Hawaii, they allow chickens to work through, both as weed control, pets, and for raising, both for food and for the eggs. But when the, I guess you call them hurricanes, go through it stuff, and it wipes out the pens and the chickens become free fowl, they have found that those chickens are now protected under the federal wildlife arrangement, and nobody can touch them and go after them. Are we going to end up with something like this if I've got free-running chickens that get outside the coop? Have we looked at this? Because Hawaii's got a problem with it.
Are we going to bring up again what happened to the chicken up on the radio tower?
Yes, I spent 3 months with Ruby the Rooster arrangement. This is why I am very cautious before I jump in to say, yes, let's go do this.
And that's understandable. And again, I think I said at the Public Works Committee that I'm such a neutral party to this, so it was probably appropriate for me to kind of finish this up. So, again, I see both sides of it. I see what you're saying. The people that are responsible are going to continue to do the right things, and there'll be a few that will not. The only thing I can say is just attending planning conferences, and Ellen might, concur with this too, is there is, new trends that are emerging though, and some of it definitely are about, more green living, sustainability. So I guess, again, with being tasked with this, I was just trying to come up with something that I felt was just kind of in the middle of the road, and something that, again, was a very, very conservative approach, but it's up to this body. So.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Anything?
I have a quick question. The current people who have chickens, I don't know if they're chicken farmers, chicken ranchers, they wouldn't be grandfathered in. They would still go through the permit process?
They would have to come up and get their permit, yeah. Yep.
They were grandfathered.
Okay, any other questions?
Your Honor, I'd like to move for adoption.
We have
haven't
second
had a
reading
second
first.
reading
Yeah.
yet.
Second reading, please.
Second reading, bill number 5755 by title only, an ordinance amending Chapter 5, Animals and Fowl of the Revised Code of the City of Brentwood, Missouri by amending Article 1 in general, providing for the raising of chickens in the city limits.
Okay. Motion?
Your Honor, I'd like to move for adoption.
Second?
I second that.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Alderman Harper?
Yes.
Alderman Nguyen?
No.
Alderman Robertson?
Yes.
Alderman Tui?
Don't be chicken.
Yes.
Alderman Leahy?
No.
Alderwoman Minister?
Yes.
Alderwoman Saunders?
Yes.
Bill number 5755 is now ordinance number 4428.
There's got to be another joke here, and I just can't think of it. It's too late. So.
Let's just, I'd like
Perfectly all right. Just
the audience, I hope we haven't just laid an egg.
Oh, yeah. Very good, very good. Okay. First reading of bill number 5754, please.
First reading Bill number 5754 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Brentwood, Missouri to enter into and execute an agreement with Gilmore and Bell and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Synopsis, please.
The synopsis for Bill 5754, Rebate Analyst Calculations Agreement. This bill is an ordinance authorizing the mayor and/or the city administrator to enter into and execute an agreement with Gilmore and Bell to serve as rebate analyst for the installment calculation of the $1,330,000 City of Brentwood, Missouri Certificates of Participation, City of Brentwood, Missouri leasing, Series 2003. The federal tax laws require that a rebate computation and a payment to the federal government, if applicable, be made at least every 5 years and upon final redemption or maturity of the certificates. If rebate has been generated, it must be paid to the IRS within 60 days after the rebate calculation date, or to be subject to interest and penalties.
Mark?
Actually, that's a pretty good synopsis.
Right.
So whenever a city does a tax-exempt bond issue, well, first of all, let me explain what arbitrage is. Arbitrage is if a city were to borrow at a tax-exempt interest rate, say 2%, and takes those bond proceeds and invests at 3%, then that 1% differential is arbitrage. And so and there's nothing wrong with arbitrage. It's great. It's just the federal government views this as that the federal government has allowed the city to borrow at a tax-exempt rate, and so the federal government views arbitrage as rightfully owing to the federal government. And so generally speaking, when cities and counties and school districts and other tax-exempt borrowers do tax-exempt bond issues, they have to do an arbitrage rebate calculation every 5 years while the bonds are outstanding to see, hey, did we earn any arbitrage? And if so, with certain exceptions, that money has to be paid over to the federal government. So it's just a calculation. It's a very specialized calculation. There's not a lot of folks that do it. It's a very specialized calculation to basically see if any money, if any interest earnings, excess interest earnings are owing to the federal government. I will tell you right now, in this interest rate environment, there's no arbitrage being generated. This deal, it's on a cumulative basis. This bond issue was done in 2003, and the reserve, interest rates have gone up and they've gone down since then. But chances are there's not going to be any interest earnings exceeding the bond yield on this deal because rates are so low right now. Nobody's earning any money.
But as a clarification too, those if any arbitrage taxes are due, that comes out of the TIF funds.
Well, this is the deal this deal is the certificates 2003.
Well, there's COPs, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
but this was for the
Fire department?
fire station deal.
Yeah, because we can combine them.
And so, by the way, you see the fee here. Actually, the federal government is nice enough that they give you a credit for your rebate calculation. So if there is any arbitrage owed, you get to deduct from the owed amount the amount that you pay to do the calculation.
Kind of like they let us take the $50 off for TurboTax.
Yeah.
Your Honor?
Yes.
The 2003 series, was that not done for the police department?
We combined it with the fire department.
Fire department,
when we issued it
and
to
where
them.
did the COPs for the trash trucks come from?
We paid those off.
But did we not have COPs for the trash trucks?
Yeah.
So wouldn't that also have to have a calculation?
But they probably did when we had them, but.
Yeah, and so they would be on different schedules, and so that's why you see this being 10 years after the 2003 deal was done, because the calculation would be due in 2008, which was performed, and now here we are 5 years later. So the calculation is required every 5 years.
Right.
Okay.
So you're going to have, so if you did a deal in 2005, then you would have done a calculation in 2010 on that deal and another one in 2015.
Okay.
Alderman Saunders?
So is this all that's owed then on the fire station? The police are rolled in, this is the entire amount, this 2003?
That's the amount on this.
Are there other issues, like this is 2003, are there other COPs? I know the library has one,
Yes.
but is there any additional for the?
They're on ours with the, I think we actually, isn't that combined in here too? with
They are
the-
combined, but it's a separate COP from.
Yeah, okay.
The library's combined in the 1,330,000?
Well, the library COP, the city did a COP for renovations to City Hall. As part of that, we rolled the library portion into that. So that's why they make a payment to us every year. Gina, do you want to?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine, I just was kind of.
I just want to make a quick clarification. The 2003 COP is actually, it is the library and city hall. It's the older.
I thought
Okay,
it was.
right.
The
Okay.
2009 COP is the firehouse,
When
and
we
then the
redid-
refunding of the 2002.
And
Okay.
how much is the 2009 like?
7.5 million.
Okay, I thought that was like, there's no way.
Yeah.
It's too new. Okay, and then can I ask, Mark, as far as, it's a very complicated topic, and I did go to your website, so you have all the questions and answers for it. Is there, like, are we exempt? Because, you know, within your website, there were certain things
Right.
like 12 payments, 24 months. So, like, if you use the construction proceeds and you paid it out within 24 months, you were
Right.
exempt?
Well, I don't know the specifics on this deal. You would not have been, we would have checked that prior to the 2008 transaction, but you're correct. There's essentially 3 exceptions to the general rule of being subject to arbitrage rebate. One is if during a calendar year a city does, or an issuer does less than $5 million. A second exception is if you meet an 18-month spend-down exception. And the third is if you meet a 24-month spend-down exception. So on both 18 and 24, the concept is you have to spend down X dollar or X percent within every 6 months, essentially. And so without, I don't have the exact percentages, but we would have checked that prior to the 2008 transaction to see if, first thing we check is, is there an exception to the requirement that you even have to do a calculation.
Okay,
So-
and we didn't qualify for that. It seems like we would, because it said not for profit, like if you're building a,
Well, you could qualify, any city or school district could qualify if you spend the money quickly enough. Or you can also qualify if the total deals that you do in a calendar year are less than $5 million. But-
How often do you actually pay an arbitrage? I mean, is it really common
To have a
to have the
rebate liability?
arbitrage? Yeah.
Well, not right now, but it was common back when interest rates were higher, because
yeah,
you're
6.
if you had a reserve fund and you're able,
Right, okay,
if
that makes sense.
cities and school districts were able to earn a significant amount of arbitrage, but right now, no, it's pretty rare.
do you know what the 2008 was there arbitrage? Do you know that amount by chance?
I don't have that
Okay,
information. I
but
don't
do you
know.
think there was some, or do you think we were?
I don't.
Okay, I was just
I
curious
would
on
hate
that.
to guess. I don't know.
But do you see what I'm saying? Like when we have that 24-month, and it's my ignorance showing here, but when you say spend down, typically within 24 months of a project, don't you have the money spent?
There's targets every 6 months. So for both the 18 and the 24-month spend down requirements, so if you miss any of the targets,
Okay.
you don't qualify. So I agree with you. Yes, at 24 months, a lot of times that money would be spent. But if you miss the 6-month target, you're gone. So if you miss any of those spend down targets, you don't qualify for the exception.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Thanks, Mark.
Sure.
Okay. Second reading, please.
Second reading, Bill Number 5754 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Brentwood, Missouri to enter into and execute an agreement with Gilmore and Bell and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Thank you. Motion, please.
Motion, Your Honor, to perfect Bill 5754 into ordinance form, please.
And second.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Alderman Lay, second by Alderwoman Saunders, to perfect Bill Number 5754 into ordinance form. Roll call, please.
Alderman Harper.
Yes.
Alderman Nguyen.
Yes.
Alderman Robertson.
Yes.
Alderman Tui.
Yes.
Alderman Lay.
Yes.
Alderwoman Manister.
Yes.
Alderwoman Saunders.
Yes.
Bill number 5754 is now ordinance number 4429.
Okay, second one now. First reading of Bill Number 5756.
First reading, Bill Number 5756 by title only, an ordinance approving and authorizing the execution of a temporary deferral and pledge agreement and a home office payment agreement relating to the city's variable rate demand increment refunding revenue bonds, Series 2007A, Eagle Road Project Phase 1, and variable rate demand tax increment improvement revenue bonds, Series 2007B, 8300 Eagle Road Project Phase 2.
Okay, thank you. Synopsis, please.
Bill number 5756. With the approval of this bill, Compass Bank and Vector Bank Colorado, N.A., the owners of 100% of the $7,675,000 original principal amount that the City of Brentwood, Missouri variable rate demand tax increment refunding revenue bonds, Series 2007A, 8300 Eagle Road Project, Phase 1, and $13,235,000 City of Brentwood, Missouri variable rate demand tax increment improvement revenue bonds, Series 2007B, for the 8300 Eagle Road Project Phase 2, hereby request that the amounts payable by the city as additional pledge revenue, as defined in the revised outline of settlement terms and conditions attached as Exhibit A to the acknowledgement and acceptance of settlement agreement and the mutual release of claims dated as of September 15, 2011, be paid directly to Compass Bank on behalf of the owners by mailing first-class postage prepaid a check payable in immediately available funds to Compass Bank.
Okay. Any other questions? Second reading, please.
Second reading, Bill Number 5756 by title only, an ordinance approving and authorizing the execution of a temporary deferral and pledge agreement and a home office payment agreement relating to the city's variable rate demand tax increment refunding revenue bonds, Series 2007A, 8300 Eagle Road Project Phase 1, and variable rate demand tax increment improvement revenue bonds, Series 2007B, 8300 Eagle Road Project Phase 2.
Thank you. Any other questions? You have a motion, please?
Your Honor, I move for adoption.
Second. Motion was made by Alderman Robertson, second by Alderman Nguyen. Roll call, please.
Alderman Harper.
Yes.
Alderman Nguyen.
Yes.
Alderman Robertson.
Yes.
Alderman Tui.
Yes.
Alderman Leahy.
No.
Alderwoman Manister.
No.
Alderwoman Saunders.
No.
Bill number 5756 is now ordinance number 4430.
Nope. Didn't
No.
get 5 votes.
Wait, I mean, I
No.
got 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Wait, what?
Hmm?
How many noes?
You only have
We got-
4.
No, it's 3-3.
No, 3-4.
It's actually
4.
4-3.
Yeah, 4-3.
Okay, next item, item 10, accounts against the city.
Would you like me to do it?
Sure.
Okay. The warrant list for the May 6, 2013 is before us. It is for $48,427.46. It should be noted that $2,688.74 is on a pass-through. No, that's on a grant that comes through. Open for discussion?
Okay. Any questions with respect to the warrant list?
I do. Just one. Me.
Oh, Alderman Saunders, I'm sorry.
Gina Urbola, is the Meridian year-to-date $21,342. Is that just through March 31st?
Correct.
Okay.
Your Honor, if I may.
Alderman Lay.
Thank you, Your Honor. On the back of the page, there is a $2,580 invoice for housing prisoners at St. Louis County Jail. Is any of that charged back to the prisoners that are being housed if they're found guilty, or is that just a city expense?
I believe it is the city expense.
Thank you. Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion that the Board of Aldermen pass the warrant list for the $48,427.46 so that the city can pay its bills.
Second.
Any other questions? All in favor of approving the warrant list, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next item, reports of committee and department heads. Just one under the mayor's report. If anybody is interested in attending the Municipal League dinner on May the 30th, Thursday evening, it's at Glen Echo Country Club. It starts at 6:30. Please let Octavia know as soon as possible so she can get the reservations in. And that's all I have under my report. Public Safety Committee?
No report. We'll have a meeting on the 16th, I think, 16th of May.
Okay. Public Works Committee?
No report, Your Honor. We do have an upcoming meeting, though.
Okay. Director of Planning?
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Alderman Saunders.
In the city report, city administrator report, you had the special use permit for Bed Bath & Beyond to have those storage trailers.
Right.
And we approved it last year, but at the end, Chairman Geppert had come forward and said, you know, we may not want to be doing that because eventually the jury is going to be looking on that site. And then Alderman Leahy has said that we don't allow Walgreens, so do we want to be, so should we maybe send that to Public Works to discuss?
Helen, do you have anything to add?
Okay, thank you.
Just as a reminder, this is a request of Bed Bath & Beyond to have for the summer months extra storage trailers behind their store because they have a website ordering process where students can, wherever they are, order their back-to-school supplies, and then when they actually get to St. Louis, to the universities, they can pick up their supplies at this location before they move into their dorms or when they're moving in. It did work out well last year. They did remove all the trailers at the time they said that they would, and so staff's already recommended approval of the special use permit. But certainly, the whole idea is that if there's any concern by the Board of Aldermen, this is something that we would bump up to the board to make a decision if they didn't feel comfortable with staff's decision.
Alderman Harper?
I have kind of a question related to that. Since it's a website order, there's no sales tax? Is that correct?
That's a good question. I don't know that.
Not that we would receive.
Right.
I mean, yeah.
Well, and
I don't know if they pay at the
No,
store.
they have a facility here in Missouri.
Yeah, and I think too. I remember when Gateway was here, the computers originally, and if they ordered it on the internet but picked it up here, they were still obligated to pay the sales tax.
Okay.
Yes. That's where the cash changes hands.
Right.
Yep.
I'm not saying that I mind stay. I just remember this from last year. I voted yes, and then after the fact, it was like, well, we should think about this moving forward. Was this the reason? Do you remember, John? Is this the specific
Well, it was
use
more
for
Target
these
with
trailers,
all of
or was it
theirs,
going to be something
right.
more permanent, like Christmas or something?
Well, first of all, one was Walgreens because they would come back every year and they promised something and then didn't follow through. The other big
Target.
Yeah.
For 10.
I was saying the one big user of these was Target, and they were permanently using them basically.
Right, even
Yeah.
after their
Right.
21,000 square foot expansion,
Right.
and it's actually prohibited in their conditional use permit or their
Right.
site plan approval permit. So,
Right.
I'm happy with staff's recommendation, bringing it forward,
Sure.
because when the jury is, if they're going to be looking out their windows on that.
Alderman Lee.
When it does open.
Oh, I'm sorry. Alderman Lee.
If it is prohibited in the Target use permit, why would this same limitation not why would it be allowed for Bed Bath & Beyond to come in and ask for it if Target is supposed to not have it? They're all under the same codes.
Target has indicated that they would no longer have these storage containers because of their expansion. One of the reasons when they were, one of the rationale for the expansion was so they could get rid of those trailers. But it's, you know, if it's an eyesore at Target, it's an eyesore at Bed Bath & Beyond. If the board prefers not to have these at all, that's up to, you know, that's certainly.
But the idea is, you know, for temporary use, that's what they're for, and Bed Bath & Beyond isn't abusing that temporary use part.
Right.
Target
they
had
can't.
them sitting out there all year long, and they'd have 30 or 40 of them.
Well, they weren't the only ones that had them out. We had a couple other places in the city of Brentwood that I brought to staff's attention that had storage containers also. And Walgreens made their request, and yes, they made some certain promises. I just think it sets a bad precedent that if we're going to tell people, no, you can't have them, then we shouldn't be allowing to pick and choose and let others do it.
But again, Walgreens made a promise that they were going to build a permanent building, and you know, that they needed it more year-round and so forth. So that's the reason it was rejected with Walgreens. So.
As long as
sorry,
if
Alderman
you
Harper.
don't want them once Drury comes in, if it doesn't cause problems for you.
I'm not sure how large they are. Is there going to be any problem with emergency vehicles having access behind the building?
No, they still have it. I believe it was, I don't have it here with me.
Oh,
but
the drawing?
There is still I think at least a 20-foot wide drive aisle.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
And then I had one other question.
Alderwoman Saunders.
Since it's planning and development, okay, so the Boys Hope, Girls Hope, that's on the agenda Wednesday, the planning and zoning agenda. Will there be public comments at that? Because people are asking.
Yes, there are actually two agenda items on the Planning and Zoning Commission agenda. One is the rezoning request, and one is the site plan approval condition use permit request. And as normal procedure, public comment is taken at each of those agenda items.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Okay. Ways and Means.
Your Honor,
Alderman Lay.
the chairman is not here. The Ways and Means Committee does have a meeting scheduled for 6:30 on 5:30, also the same night as the dinner.
Can we address that?
Yes. If the members of the committee are in agreement, can we move that time slot to 4:30 instead of 6:30 without the chairman's consent?
You're the members. Yeah.
Say yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm fine.
3 members of the Ways and Means Committee agree to move that meeting to 4:30, Bola, if you so record it.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
That is for Thursday the 30th of May at 4:30 now.
Who runs the meeting?
Huh?
Tom.
Who runs the meeting?
Take a vote.
That's fine.
Okay.
They
Okay.
voted. I mean, they're the committee members.
3 members voted to move it to 4:30.
Okay.
They'll pick a winner.
Yeah. Thank you, Your Honor.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. City Attorney,
No report, Your Honor.
City Clerk Administrator.
No report, Your Honor.
Thank you. Excise Commissioner, nothing this evening. Library,
Nothing right now.
Municipal League, we already did that. Communications, nothing. Historical Society,
Nothing right now.
no closed meeting this evening. Any unfinished business? Any new business?
Your Honor, if I may.
Alderman Lady.
The Ward 3 meeting for May will be Tuesday night, May 27th at 7 o'clock here in the council room. All are invited.
Okay. Alderman Saunders.
And the Ward 1 meeting will be Tuesday, May 14th at 6:30 p.m. And then again, tomorrow night, the state audit results are at the Brentwood Rec Center at 6 o'clock tomorrow night.
Okay. I was going to make one other comment, and maybe I probably should have done this under mine, but I'll just be very upfront. I'm a little bit frustrated with the fact that we did not pass this ordinance with respect to the issuance of these funds to reduce the interest rate on these bonds. And most importantly, because our legal counsel had recommended that to the city, that was in the best interest of the city to do. And I know it's complicated. I know there's a lot of things going on. But as it's already been brought up, we're paying a lot of money for that advice. and it was their recommendation. And when I said that we've been working on this since May, that was really the attorneys, I'm sorry, since prior to December, that was really the attorneys putting that document together and working on negotiations to bring that forward here to the board tonight. And I think we ought to think very hard when what the decisions that we make, in my opinion, putting the city at jeopardy when legal counsel makes a recommendation and then we don't follow it. I just needed to say that because the things that we do are very important, and we need to make sure that we're making the right decision for the right reasons. And I think that the city made a wrong decision tonight. Alderman Leahy.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, I am sorry you feel that way. It is this same legal counsel that missed the selling of the garage and the violation of the entire redevelopment agreement by selling an asset out from underneath the redevelopment agreement without notification to this board or the city in any way, shape, or form. That notice came in a newspaper article, and this legal counsel missed it. We never raised it to the judge in a timely manner. I have questions as to whether or not that legal advice is highly expensive, but at times I'm thinking that it's not in this city's best interest that we're giving up more cash for a development that this city told them they would have financial problems with. They had to go out and get a 100% letter of guarantee that they wouldn't default. And when the banks called it in and called those guarantees in, we get sued because these people don't come forward on their documents in order to make this development. So I'm sorry, I think some of the legal advice is flawed too.
Well, and if you'll remember, at the time, Alderman Leahy,
yes, sir?
They were advisors at that point. It wasn't that legal counsel that made that decision or was involved with it. That was our insurance lawyers at the time who pleaded. It did take it to the judge, but it didn't work out when he made his plea with the judge. So it wasn't Thompson and Coburn that did that. Okay, it was the legal representation that we got from our attorneys, or from our insurance company that did that, not Thompson and Coburn. Alderman Saunders.
I hear your frustration, Mayor. I have, though, asked about Thompson and Coburn the last few months for an update, and from the beginning, it's we're a nominal party, nothing's happening, and I keep saying, you know, something's got to be happening. We're incurring $4,000 to $5,000 a month, and then all of a sudden, if they're working on this since last December, I'd like to be brought along as they're working on it instead of all of a sudden have it right before me. I mean, if that's okay in the future.
Well, but again, you know, all they do is keep us abreast with emails when they're in these conversations because, you know, if you want to bring them here to a Board of Alderman meeting, go into executive session and spend more money, they explained all those things last week in the executive session. They gave you the updates. It really hadn't changed much. They've been taking depositions. They've been are overseeing depositions on behalf of the city. We weren't taking any depositions. And they gave you the update of where they were and how this document was created. And again, that was really done more through the bank's attorneys and Gilmore and Bell, and then at the final it was reviewed by Thompson and Coburn to make sure that we weren't jeopardizing anything within the agreement. And so, you know, but these are the questions that were asked in executive session last meeting and were, for the most part, answered, I thought. Again, you know, you take it for what it's worth for what I say, but you know, our obligation is to protect the city, and that should be our number one obligation. And like you said, we're paying an awful lot of money to Thompson Coburn, and I think Alderman Leahy and you were a little bit confused on who made some of those decisions over a year ago, but it wasn't Thompson and Coburn. They were the ones that brought it to the attention of the city.
Your Honor, when they sold the building out from underneath the redevelopment agreement, why did the city not stop the redevelopment agreement right then and there? And what happened to the $13 million that was paid for that building? Where did that money go? Why didn't it all go in to go towards paying off some of the bonds and indebtedness?
Well, I don't remember what the official number was, but again, if you want to bring our legal counsel in and go through rehash all this again,
it's not rehashing. It never got formally addressed, other than the judge said you're too late in timely
because
filing.
the lawsuit was already filed. So if a judge says that, Andy, what are we going to need to do? Should we have filed another lawsuit?
I think the city should have called DCM on the carpet the day they sold the building without notifying us to get permission to do so.
We didn't find out until 2 months later that they sold the building.
Okay, and that 2 months later was before
And the
all of
lawsuit was
illicit-
already filed.
Okay.
We were in negotiations. We were in with the arbitrator, or the
sir.
in there negotiating the redevelopment, or negotiating the settlement.
Settlement agreement.
When one of the attorneys saw it in the Business Journal,
Yes.
and it had happened 2 months prior to that. We were way down the road at this point.
But that action in itself violates the entire redevelopment agreement,
But
sir.
the redevelopment agreement was out the window because we were already involved in another lawsuit.
And you would like us to pay more money in to settle
I
this
wouldn't like
thing?
us to pay anything, Andy.
Well, no, we signed up to participate in this, but you're asking the citizens of Brentwood to put more money into
No.
this redevelopment instead
We're
of
putting-
just half of the bottom
That's
half.
already done. We're putting in what we said we would do. And we're not taking the recommendation of our legal counsel. Alderman Saunders.
And I just would ask, when you responded to mine, you just said that, we could have Thompson Coburn come in, but you mentioned that you receive email updates. If those were sent to all of the aldermen or put in a confidential envelope in our mailboxes,
We
I'd
can
like
do
to see
that
those.
as well,
I mean,
but
all-
we had an executive session where the mayor updated the board
Right.
on these kind of updates.
But
I'm just
I can
asking,
tell you,
though,
if
as
you
we're
want an
coming along.
the email that says they're reviewing and looking at the
Deposition.
depositions. I mean, that's all it says. I mean,
Well-
there isn't a real update
We
because
can
nothing
do
is
that
really
going
right.
forward.
Thank you. Thank
Not a
you.
problem.
It's not a
Right.
big deal. But also, can we have Thompson and Coburn? I would like to look at Muzak and Scope's depositions, and hopefully they've gotten Bushes by now.
Could
Well,
you
we would
repeat
have to
that?
pay for those. Yeah.
No. They have to have, we're the client. They have to have a copy here.
I don't know. Well,
I don't know. I will ask. You want to see all the depositions?
From the current suit. I'm not talking about going back. I want to talk the current. They just were recently deposed.
But just so you understand, we're not doing those deposits. We are overseeing them because they want to make sure that if anything comes up, they're protecting the city. So I would think that, I don't know that we have copies of those depositions. Our attorneys do, but we can ask them.
Well, I know David Wells would have them, but we're
Oh, we'll
entitled
ask.
to them. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you.
We got to talk to somebody.
Oh, yes. We'll open up for public comment. If anybody would like to address the board, please come
Before
forward.
we do that,
Oh,
what about doing another vote? Should anybody choose to change their mind?
well, that's up to the board. I mean,
I think it's important that we do it, because I agree with you. I think it's extremely risky not to take the advice of our lawyers on something as complicated and unfamiliar as this. I mean, there's no way we can read these agreements, at least not me, and I think I'm able to read anything anybody else can, and actually understand all the convolutions of this thing. We've gotten our advice. That's why we pay them to do it. So I think it's foolhardy.
well, maybe after public comment, you could make a motion when Alderman Winley's back. Sorry.
Karen Smith. So, very interesting conversation, but after all, it is legal advice, and you all do make the final decision. I think this is a perfect example of how these types of arrangements are extremely risky for the city. Who set up the legal agreements from the get-go that placed our city in this kind of a position? No one can figure out who's responsible, and a lot of lawyers are making a lot of money off of this. So I think there's some valid concerns about what has happened here. And I actually was at a planning and zoning meeting where one of the members, Dan Glowski, I thought did an excellent job when one of the developers was bringing forth some plans, and they didn't give sufficient time for all the questions to be answered. And he said, you're not being respectful of my time when you bring something forward like this. If your aldermen have questions, help them understand it. If you think that they're in the wrong, that's your job. That's that lawyer's job, is to help them understand it and to be clear before bringing a document before to them, and they don't even know what is in it. I think it's just poor execution on the part of the city and on the part of that legal counsel. So before any of that happened, I had a question about the reimbursement obligation, the 2007B reimbursement obligation, and the 2007 reimbursement obligation. So if I understood what you said earlier, this is agreement between the city and the Compass, but the city is passing along funds that they're getting from the developer, and so the city failed to reimburse those, to make those reimbursement obligations because they didn't get the money from the developer. But if I'm interpreting this statement correctly, or this new bill, we will be paying those amounts. So my question is whether the developer has provided us with those funds to pay those amounts. And going back to what Andy was saying earlier, if we do make this agreement and we move forward with it, and we do pay these reimbursement obligations, will the developer pay back those amounts to us? If this development doesn't, if the whole thing falls through, do we still lose this money? And how much is it? That's my questions. Thank you. I still haven't gotten the answer on that. Thank you.
Matt Saunders. Your Honor, may I have permission to apologize?
Please.
I'm sorry. After hearing the mayor's explanation, I am wrong. You are right. Chickens really smell, by the way. Working on a farm, they're only right behind pigs. There's a heck of an ammonia smell. It makes great fertilizer, though. So if you can steal their manure, go for it. I asked a couple questions. I was just curious to where we were with those. The Section 244 order of business at a meeting, number 4 is opening of bids here and then reading. I was just wondering if we could go ahead and do that. Also, I asked a question in regards to the raises. Did we just go ahead and blanket 3% raises, or what percentage of the actual raised money was handed out? And then my final comment, I'm sorry, Your Honor, but I have to disagree with you on the inventory situation. You're bringing in outside folks to do our inventory. I'm just reading the municipal code of Brentwood, and it just doesn't look like it's being followed. And it says that every year our city administrator will contact internal people to find out what our inventory is and then give it to you. Now, if you're saying we're so far behind on inventory because we haven't done it for years and have had no control that we need to spend money to get these updates, that's a different story. But just reading the municipal code, section 2-3, and duties are under the city clerk administrators, all of you are responsible to have that inventory for us every year, and we didn't have it this December 31st. And after hearing your explanation, I'm at a loss for why we have to spend money to do that. Because again, I'm just reading the municipal code. It's got nothing to do with someone coming from the outside. Everything that's being asked to do here is done internally. And so I'm just at a loss for why we can't do our inventory. Thank you.
Closed public comment. I think we could just have the department's head send in to go around and do their own inventory, but we wanted to have an outside company come in and do a complete inventory, get it back up to code. Again, to say that a lot has been going on for the last year and a half that Bola's been here would be an understatement. To give her a pass on getting the inventory complete by December 31st of 2012, which would have been her first full year, in my opinion, would be understandable. But that's a board decision. If they want to, decide or do something different, that's fine. But I think we're proceeding down that line to do it, and I think it is something that we need to do. With respect to the raises, I think they are tabulating that. They're bringing something back to Ways and Means. It's
We
something.
actually did that already.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So Ways and Means has that.
Would you like?
Well, go ahead.
I can give you very close, rough numbers.
Okay.
In the city budget, we had $185,000 expected to
10,000
expend.
more than that.
It was 195.
Yeah, 195 for issuing out all the raises, and we ended up issuing out 143,000 out of that figure.
Okay.
In the merit raises.
Yeah. And with respect to bid opening, I mean, I would have to check the code. I can tell you, in my 20 years here, bid openings have never been done at a Board of Alderman meeting. I don't know if that's what the code says. Most of the bid openings are done here in this room. Normally they're done during the day because if we're talking larger contracts, the contractors like to be here when the bid openings are done. They're usually posted in the bids, usually says 10 o'clock City Hall, this date. A lot of times, let's say on a street project or something like that, you'll see 5 or 6 bidders walk in at 5 till 10. They want to get their bids in last, kind of thing. So, but I have never known, and I don't know any municipality that actually does the bid openings at Board of Alderman meetings. But they are done here in this room. at whatever time they post them for those specific projects. Then it's brought here to the board.
It's
Sometimes it
brought to
goes
the
to subcommittee
committees
first, but depending on timing, sometimes they come to the board first and referred back to committees. But that's the way we've always done it. So.
Yeah, I can tell you somebody that visits, public works type bids are always read immediately after they're delivered.
Right.
Always, with the contractors present.
It's just what it says, so I would say change what it says for the meeting.
Does it say at Board of Alderman meetings?
Yeah, it says number 4 is opening of bids. It doesn't say reading, it says opening.
Are you talking about on the agenda?
Yes.
Well, that just means that we're bringing the bids forward and reading them into the
I
record.
think that's not what it
Okay.
says, that's all.
Well-
It's just the wording, it's, get a lawyer involved, I'll give you 4 different answers.
Mine says bids on my
Okay.
agenda, so, okay. Okay. Any other questions? So, all right, motion to adjourn?
Yes. Motion
Second?
to adjourn.
Oh,
I thought Mr. Robertson was going to raise an issue.
No, I was
no.
second.
Oh, did you want to go for a revote?
Oh, I mean, would it do any
Do
good?
you want to make a motion to revote? Is anybody going to change their vote?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, it's fine. All right.
We'll bring it back
All
to
right.
another meeting.
Motion to adjourn, first and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries.